You lean against the cool timber frame of your humble cottage as dusk settles over the village. The steady glow of the hearth invites you inward, yet you pause to draw in the sharp tang of smoke still clinging to the air. Somewhere beyond the thatched roofs, church bells peal in low, measured tones, weaving through the distant brays of livestock settling into their stalls for the night. The sky above shifts from amber to deep indigo, and you feel the gentle chill against your skin, a reminder that autumn's breath will soon surrender to winter's fierce grip. In this hushed moment, you cradle both hope and hardship like fragile birds in your chest. Everywhere you look, life hums with contrast. From across the rolling fields, torchlight flickers in the windows of the Lord's manor, promising tables groaning with roasted meats, sweet bread, and laughter echoing behind polished oak doors. Yet here, at the edge of his domain, heavy carts creak under the weight of root vegetables dragged from cold, damp earth by thin-armed children whose ribs press too close to coarse homespun cloth. You sense an unspoken tension in the air, abundance and want standing side by side, separated only by a stretch of muddy road and a whisper of silk. As you turn toward the hearth's warm embrace, your family's quiet rhythms envelop you. A neighbor's toddler scuttles barefoot across the uneven flagstones, her laughter bright against the crackle of burning logs. You remember your mother's soft voice speaking of the season's endless cycle, spring's promise of fresh sowing, summer's labor under sun-scorched skies, autumn's rush to store the harvest before chill winds arrive, and winter's slow hours spent spinning wool by candlelight. Each task brings purpose and peril alike. A slipped stitch could invite frostbite, a missed ration might mean empty bellies, and every sunrise could demand strength you did not know you possessed. Beyond your door, the village stands at the crossroads of many lives. You glimpse the blacksmith's forge, its hammer striking glowing iron in rhythmic certainty, and catch the sweet, smoky tang of molten metal mingling with sweat. You know that each horseshoe he shapes carries the weight of commerce and warfare alike, and that one misaligned strike could shatter bone. A few paces farther, the midwife moves among cottages under lantern light, her basket of herbs and whispered prayers a lifeline for mothers and newborns. You imagine the hush of midnight watches, the sudden rush of pain and relief, and the courage it takes to usher life into a world so often unwilling to protect it. Above it all, the seasons govern your every heartbeat. In spring, you kneel in soft, thawing soil, pressing seeds beneath earth still cool from snowmelt. Your fingertips come away stained with dark loam, and you marvel at how tiny grains promise future feasts. Summer fields stretch gold under relentless sun, and your arms ache as you bind heavy sheaves into neat bundles. In autumn's golden hour, neighbors gather to toss bushels into barns, voices rising in toil and song even as foreboding clouds gather on the horizon. When winter arrives, its breath whistles through shuttered windows, driving you to spin fleece into warm thread, to patch tattered cloaks, and to offer prayers for health and safety. Social hierarchy pulses through these rhythms like a hidden drumbeat. Each dawn, the steward rides through the village, his steeds hoof striking cobbles as he surveys taxes and tithes owed. You deliver fresh milk in wooden pails to his table, wrists aching from the weight, cheeks flushed with both effort and cautious deference. One misplaced word could cost you a coin or insult a gentle lord. Meanwhile, in the shadows, beggar children press torn hands against your skirts, pleading for crusts of stale bread you can scarcely spare. Even kindness holds its own peril, for a gift today may invite burdensome expectation tomorrow. The church's presence threads through every hour, its bells marking time like a steady heartbeat. You recall the hush of Sunday Mass, villagers gathering in patched but earnest cloaks, voices lifting in simple hymns that speak of mercy and judgment in the same breath. You taste the thin, sour wine on your tongue, a symbol of grace shared across all stations, peasant, noble, and craftsman alike. Yet beneath that unity simmers unrest. Tithes drawn from fragile harvests press heavily on aching hands, and whispers of heresy set nervous hearts racing even within the pew's wooden walls. Even as you savor this fragile peace, your thoughts drift to neighbors bound by darker labors. You remember last evening's hush at the graveyard's edge, the gravedigger's shovel biting into chilled earth as he laid another villager to rest. You heard the soft cough of the woman tasked with carrying those silent bodies to their final home, a duty both solemn and shunned. You recall the miller's furious cry when a wheelstone cracked beneath his foot, blood speckling the fresh white flour meant to feed hungry mouths. All around you, peril hides in plain sight, sewn into every corner of daily life. Tonight, the hearth's warmth eases the weight of those worries on your shoulders as you wonder what tomorrow might demand. And as stars prick the velvet sky, you allow your mind to wander gently, readying yourself for the stories tomorrow's dawn will bring. Rest now, traveler. History cradle your dreams softly. Before we peer into cold soil and damp linen, consider the silent courage it takes to claim life's leftovers as livelihood. You step into the morning mist, leather boots heavy with dew, and feel each footprint sink into the churned mud of the village lane. In your arms, burlap sacks strain against coarse wicker handles as you bend and gather soggy scraps of cloth, fragments of gowns, torn hoods, threadbare shirts once worn by richer folk. Each rag carries a story, a thread pulled free from the bustle of a market day, a hem frayed by the hurried footsteps of a traveler. You pause to inhale the sharp scent of damp burlap, the tang of earth mingling with distant hearth smoke. There is a somber rhythm to this work, a silence broken only by drips from low-hanging eaves and the soft rustle of discarded fabric. The sun's pale rays reveal fragile treasures strewn along hedgerows, broken buckles, bits of metal, shards of pottery tossed aside by those blinded by haste or privilege. You stoop to retrieve a small iron clasp, its edges rusted by seasons of neglect, and tuck it into your pocket as one might cradle a rare gem. A nearby child offers you a bone, polished smooth by rain and time, hoping you will barter it for a crust of bread. You press a copper coin into her hand and guide her toward the miller's wife, who sometimes trades porridge for fines. This exchange, modest though it is, fuels the fragile web of community that binds ragpickers and needy families alike. As the village stirs, you make your way toward the churchyard, where the scent of freshly turned turf hangs heavy in the cold air. The iron gate swings open with a slow creak, and you are met with an expanse of grey stones, each marking a life once vibrant. Here, gravediggers perform a grim ballet, shovels glinting in dawn light, blades slicing through sodden soil with practiced precision. You kneel beside them, sleeves rolled high, feeling cool earth press into your palms and settle beneath your nails. Each shovelful carries a weight beyond mere dirt. It carries the burden of countless farewells whispered in candlelit chambers. A gravedigger next to you murmurs a prayer for the soul of the departed, and you follow with your own silent invocation. The hush of this sacred task is broken only by the low thud of coffins meeting soft ground. You note the contrast between life's messy abandon, visible in the rag heaps behind your cottage, and the solemn order of burial here. Disease, unseen yet ever present, courses through the damp clay. You recall tales of plague and fever that flared with each season's change, and you grip the shovel's handle more tightly, steeling yourself against dread. By midday, your cloak clings to your shoulders, heavy with the weight of gathered cloth and fading hope. You trudge to the edge of the yard where a cluster of ragpickers rests on mossy stones. In tired voices, they trade bargaining tales. Who found the finest scrap of silk, who escaped the constable's glare, who traded a pinch of mustard seed for coins. Over a battered pot of herbal tea, collected from hedgerow blossoms, you share laughter and whispered fears. The steam curls upward, carrying with it fleeting warmth. Even in hardship, solidarity blooms among those who scavenge. Returning home, you sort through your morning haul. Rugged strips of linen destined for patchwork mingle with coarse wool fibers bound for knitting into mitts. You run your fingers along rough edges, imagining how each patch will seal drafts in a widow's quilt or lend softness to a child's ragdoll. In these small acts, you are both artist and healer, transforming society's refuse into tokens of care. The texture of each strip tells a story. Its weave reveals the skill of distant weavers. Its dye hints at precious roots or bark once boiled to color the cloth. Your path in life is neither noble nor lauded, yet it pulses with purpose. You recall the first time you ventured alone down this muddy track, heart pounding as you approached the refuse heap. The world's disdain pressed against your skin like thorns, but you pressed on, guided by necessity and a stubborn sense of dignity. Each scrap you saved, each bone you passed to tanners for glue, sustained your family through harsh winters when frost stole breath from every living thing. In your humility, you mastered the art of making little become enough. Late afternoon finds you at the churchyard again, this time to linger by an unmarked grave where a woman's shroud is laid bare by wind. A gravedigger offers you a glove, and together you smooth down fresh earth. You feel the soil's cool granules slip between your fingers and remember the sorrowful prayers you spoke here. That humility in death, mirrored by your own uncelebrated toil, binds you to generations of the forgotten. And in this unity of purpose, you discover a quiet fellowship that transcends social boundaries. When dusk spills across the sky, you return to the ragpicker's circle by the hearth. Flames dance in a barrel, casting gentle light on tired faces. You cradle a chipped bowl of thin stew, barley, turnips, and the occasional bone broth, sharing it among friends whose laughter still warms the chill air. Stories drift between mouthfuls. One recalls a daughter reunited after years apart. Another glories in a scrap of lace bought for a child's bonnet. In these moments, you taste both scarcity and abundance. Scarcity in each carefully measured spoonful, abundance in the bond that knits struggling souls together. Before leaving, you kneel by the barrel's glow and smooth damp skirts beneath your knees. You breathe deeply, perfume of hearth smoke and wet clay mingling on your tongue. In this refuge of shared hardship, you find purpose that outshines privilege. The dignity of work that transforms refuse into warmth, the courage to claim value where others see only waste. The ragpickers and gravediggers, two faces of survival, stand as witnesses to life's ebb and flow, to endings and beginnings intertwined. If this glimpse into forgotten labor moves you, drop a comment with your feelings on the dignity of work. May your dreams carry you across silent lanes where courage thrives in small, unseen acts as morning light breathes hope into every discarded fragment. Sleep now, gentle soul, and rest. Always, let the river's chill wash over your senses, reminding you that even water can become a weapon against the body. At first light, you hoist a heavy wooden barrel from the rough-hewn cart, joints protesting as dawn's pale glow finds your shoulders aching already. The barrel's iron bands bite into your palms, and you shift its weight, bracing against each tremor that runs down your arms. You step onto the grassy bank, blades of wet grass brushing your ankles, and lower the barrel with a careful heave until it clatters against smooth stones. In that moment, the world feels impossibly large and your tasks impossibly small. Yet every drop of water you summon promises to chase away another stain of toil. As the stream's cold fingers curl around your calves, you tip the barrel's contents into the rushing current. Water hisses and surges, foaming around half-submerged tunics, shirts, and hose once worn by wealthier folk in velvet splendor. You wade in, feeling the smooth river stones underfoot, and draw a tunic from the swirl of foam. Its fabric is slick and heavy, laden with sweat and the stubborn remnants of roasted garlic from last night's feast. You scrub with a block of wood dipped in lye, harvested from wood ashes and quicklime, as caustic as it is vital, your hands roaring with each back and forth stroke. The sharp bite of lye stings beneath your fingernails, and you grit your teeth against the pain, driven onward by necessity and a stubborn streak of pride. With each violent swipe, foam leaps upward in frothy peaks, carrying away the grime of markets and hearths. You lean into the motion, twisting your torso until the ache in your back blooms like a bruise beneath your ribs. You imagine the spinners will turning threads into fine cloth, and you wonder at the irony. You labor to make fabric pure again, a quiet guardian of appearances unseen by those who wear these garments. After scrubbing comes stomping. You step into a shallow pool formed by stones set strategically beneath the water's surface, and you press your full weight onto damp fabric, toes curling against the slick riverbed. Each stomp sends sudsy water sloshing around your knees. You feel every bone in your foot protest, every ligament tighten as you lift and drop your heel. Bubbles burst like tiny fireworks before drifting away, carrying with them the last shadows of mud and sweat. The rhythmic dance of your feet grows hypnotic. Stomp, slosh, rise, repeat. It is labor at once brutal and vital, a ritual that binds you to centuries of women who came before. Between barrels, you catch your breath and share knowing glances with fellow laundresses gathered along the bank. Their dresses are patched and faded, but their eyes gleam with shared determination. You exchange nods and muted smiles, small comforts in a world that measures your worth by coin and caste. Here, in this makeshift sanctuary of water and wood, gossip drifts like incense. rumors of fair rides in the Lord's courts, warnings of fresh taxes on cloth, even whispered gratitude when a tunic you washed brings a child warmth against bitter winds. In laughter and chatter, you find respite from the lie's burn and the cold's bite. But this work carries hidden peril beyond aching limbs. The lie you mix is both cleaner and curse, dissolving grime but tearing at flesh with every miscalculation. You know too well the story of Marjorie, whose arms reddened and throbbed until she could scarcely lift her basket. You remember how her clubbed nails cracked from chemical exposure, each fissure a silent testament to sacrifice. In winter, the water's chill cuts deeper still. Hands that grow numb in one season thaw into aching throb the next. You wrap leather thongs around wrists to stave off blisters, but no remedy shields you from long-term sores or the creeping stiffness that saps strength. Medieval textile production weaves itself through every motion you make. You recall the carder's brush, teasing fibers into a soft mass before the spinner draws the first thread. You feel compassion for the fuller who pounds wool in giant tubs, mixing urine, clay, and water to mat fibers into sturdy cloth. An odious process, yet one that birthed garments warm enough to ward off frost. You think of the dyer, who boiled roots and bark in iron cauldrons to color cloth in deep indigos and rusty crimsons. Each trade depends on the next, and your role ensures that textiles survive their wear to dance again in sunlight, pristine and pure against sun-kissed skin. At midday, you rest by the bank, shoulders slumped and breath coming in soft wheezes. Your tunic, once brilliant white, clings to you now like a second skin, heavy with water and fatigue. You sip from a wooden ladle of cooled water drawn from an upturned pot, savoring sweetness you cannot explain. Sunlight dapples through leaves overhead, casting shifting patterns on river stones. For a moment, you close your eyes and imagine yourself far from labor, perhaps spinning flax under a blooming apple tree, or stitching fine lace by candlelight in a warm room. Yet in a heartbeat, the hiss of water and the ache in your arms call you back to purpose. When the barrels stand empty and the last foam drifts away, you hoist them again, arms trembling under the weight. You line them on the bank, each marked with chalk to claim ownership in this shared space. As you pack garments to carry home, you smooth each fold with tired fingers, imagining how they will dry in the sun and bring comfort to their owners. You shoulder your burden and offer a soft farewell to the stream, a silent vow that tomorrow you will return, greeting its chill once more with the same stubborn resolve. In the fading light, you gather with your companions to stoke a small fire and warm limbs stiff from water's embrace. You share simple fare, stale bread dipped in thin broth, cooled cheese that crumbles on your tongue, cider pressed from late apples. Conversation flickers between laughter and sighs, stories of mislaid buttons, taunts from passing soldiers, hopes for fairer weather. In communal warmth, you feel the invisible bond of your hidden burden grow stronger. A sisterhood forged in lie and labor, resilience and remembrance. Do you know someone who loves unusual history stories? Invite them to join us on this journey. As night deepens and stars emerge like pinpricks of distant fire, rest your body and mind. May your dreams flow gently, carried on the same steady current that bore your burdens today. Now, lean in close and listen to the quiet miracle and risk of new life in medieval hands. You slip through the low doorway of the candlelit chamber, every footfall muffled by rushes strewn upon the cold stone floor. A soft hush greets you, broken only by the ragged breaths of the laboring mother and the distant drip of water from a wooden bucket. You carry a small basket of herbs and linens, knowing that each bloom of lavender or sprig of rue may coax comfort or ward off unseen dangers. Your lantern's flame dances against the pale plaster walls, revealing the tense curve of a husband's shoulder as he kneels in prayer beside the birthing stool. At the mother's side, you place a cool cloth soaked in rosewater against her brow. You feel the gentle press of her hand against your wrist, knuckles white with pain and hope. With calm words, soft as a lullaby, you guide her through each surge, reminding her to breathe into the gentle pull of every contraction. The air smells of beeswax and crushed mint, the mingling scents both soothing and sharp in your nostrils. Beside you, the midwife's apprentice hands you a linen to mop at the mother's lip. You fold it carefully, your fingers steady despite the tremor in your own heart. In this dimly glowing sanctum, time stretches between each breath. You recall the many risks you carry into every cottage and hall. A child's first gasp might slip away, a mother's strength might falter, and you, trusted shepherd of souls, could face accusations of negligence or worse. The law is stern. Should the infant not survive, you answer for every twist of cord or slip of hand. Yet you lean ever closer, pressing healing salves of comfrey and violet to the mother's thighs, whispering prayers learned at your grandmother's knee. You trace gentle circles over her belly, coaxing the babe toward the world beyond. At last, the labor's tide breaks. A single, keening cry erupts into the hushed stillness, and you catch the newborn in trembling arms. Tiny ribs rise and fall beneath the slick sheen of vernix, and you cradle this fragile life close to your heart. You wrap her in soft linen, the fibers rough against her tender skin, and press her gently to her mother's breast. The hush dissolves into amazed sobs, soft kisses pressed against powdered cheeks. Eyes shining with tears, the mother traces the delicate curve of her baby's ear and murmurs thanks to saints both seen and unseen. You linger only long enough to tie the cord with wax thread, secure and clean, and to anoint the child's brow with consecrated oil. Then, hands washed in sweet-smelling water, you gather your basket and prepare to depart. But your night's work is far from done. Before dawn's first light, another life will stir in a cradle elsewhere, and another mother will look to you for sustenance and solace. You move now to the quarters of the wet nurses, worn wooden cradles lined up beneath narrow windows. Here, women who once birthed their own children now nurse infants claimed by hearths they did not build. You pause at the doorway, inhaling the scent of stale porridge and milk-sour tears. A gentle woman lifts her head from the cradle's edge, eyes ringed with midnight shadows. You feel the weight of her choice. For some, wet nursing brings needed coins to feed hungry siblings, yet it bears the bittersweet cost of a child's embrace given to another. You approach her side and offer a cup of warm broth laced with fennel and honey, its steam fogging the cool air. You rest a hand on her shoulder, feeling the tremor of her spine, and speak softly of courage and care. As she lifts the babe to her breast, you witness the blossom of relief in her eyes and the poignancy of milk flowing for a child not her own. You remember the first time you watched your grandmother nurse an orphaned nephew, her gaze steady with compassion. Now, you honor that same silent bravery in every woman who lets her body become a lifeline beyond her own blood. In these cramped chambers, stories weave among you like threads in a tapestry. But this work carries hidden peril beyond aching limbs. The lie you mix is both cleaner and curse, dissolving grime but tearing at flesh with every miscalculation. You know too well the story of Marjorie, whose arms reddened and throbbed until she could scarcely lift her basket. You remember how her clubbed nails cracked from chemical exposure, each fissure a silent testament to sacrifice. In winter, the water's chill cuts deeper still. Hands that grow numb in one season thaw into aching throb the next. You wrap leather thongs around wrists to stave off blisters, but no remedy shields you from long-term sores or the creeping stiffness that saps strength. Medieval textile production weaves itself through every motion you make. You recall the carder's brush, teasing fibers into a soft mass before the spinner draws the first thread. You feel compassion for the fuller who pounds wool in giant tubs, mixing urine, clay, and water to mat fibers into sturdy cloth. An odious process, yet one that birthed garments warm enough to ward off frost. You think of the dyer, who boiled roots and bark in iron cauldrons to color cloth in deep indigos and rusty crimsons. Each trade depends on the next, and your role ensures that textiles survive their wear to dance again in sunlight, pristine and pure against sun-kissed skin. At midday, you rest by the bank, shoulders slumped and breath coming in soft wheezes. Your tunic, once brilliant white, clings to you now like a second skin, heavy with water and fatigue. You sip from a wooden ladle of cooled water drawn from an upturned pot, savoring sweetness you cannot explain. Sunlight dapples through leaves overhead, casting shifting patterns on river stones. For a moment, you close your eyes and imagine yourself far from labor, perhaps spinning flax under a blooming apple tree, or stitching fine lace by candlelight in a warm room. Yet in a heartbeat, the hiss of water and the ache in your arms call you back to purpose. When the barrels stand empty and the last foam drifts away, you hoist them again, arms trembling under the weight. You line them on the bank, each marked with chalk to claim ownership in this shared space. As you pack garments to carry home, you smooth each fold with tired fingers, imagining how they will dry in the sun and bring comfort to their owners. You shoulder your burden and offer a soft farewell to the stream, a silent vow that tomorrow you will return, greeting its chill once more with the same stubborn resolve. In the fading light, you gather with your companions to stoke a small fire and warm limbs stiff from water's embrace. You share simple fare, stale bread dipped in thin broth, cooled cheese that crumbles on your tongue, cider pressed from late apples. Conversation flickers between laughter and sighs, stories of mislaid buttons, taunts from passing soldiers, hopes for fairer weather. In communal warmth, you feel the invisible bond of your hidden burden grow stronger. A sisterhood forged in lie and labor, resilience and remembrance. Do you know someone who loves unusual history stories? Invite them to join us on this journey. As night deepens and stars emerge like pinpricks of distant fire, rest your body and mind. May your dreams flow gently, carried on the same steady current that bore your burdens today. Now, lean in close and listen to the quiet miracle and risk of new life in medieval hands. You slip through the low doorway of the candlelit chamber, every footfall muffled by rushes strewn upon the cold stone floor. A soft hush greets you, broken only by the ragged breaths of the laboring mother and the distant drip of water from a wooden bucket. You carry a small basket of herbs and linens, knowing that each bloom of lavender or sprig of rue may coax comfort or ward off unseen dangers. Your lantern's flame dances against the pale plaster walls, revealing the tense curve of a husband's shoulder as he kneels in prayer beside the birthing stool. At the mother's side, you place a cool cloth soaked in rosewater against her brow. You feel the gentle press of her hand against your wrist, knuckles white with pain and hope. With calm words, soft as a lullaby, you guide her through each surge, reminding her to breathe into the gentle pull of every contraction. The air smells of beeswax and crushed mint, the mingling scents both soothing and sharp in your nostrils. Beside you, the midwife's apprentice hands you a linen to mop at the mother's lip. You fold it carefully, your fingers steady despite the tremor in your own heart. In this dimly glowing sanctum, time stretches between each breath. You recall the many risks you carry into every cottage and hall. A child's first gasp might slip away, a mother's strength might falter, and you, trusted shepherd of souls, could face accusations of negligence or worse. The law is stern. Should the infant not survive, you answer for every twist of cord or slip of hand. Yet you lean ever closer, pressing healing salves of comfrey and violet to the mother's thighs, whispering prayers learned at your grandmother's knee. You trace gentle circles over her belly, coaxing the babe toward the world beyond. At last, the labor's tide breaks. A single, keening cry erupts into the hushed stillness, and you catch the newborn in trembling arms. Tiny ribs rise and fall beneath the slick sheen of vernix, and you cradle this fragile life close to your heart. You wrap her in soft linen, the fibers rough against her tender skin, and press her gently to her mother's breast. The hush dissolves into amazed sobs, soft kisses pressed against powdered cheeks. Eyes shining with tears, the mother traces the delicate curve of her baby's ear and murmurs thanks to saints both seen and unseen. You linger only long enough to tie the cord with wax thread, secure and clean, and to anoint the child's brow with consecrated oil. Then, hands washed in sweet-smelling water, you gather your basket and prepare to depart. But your night's work is far from done. Before dawn's first light, another life will stir in a cradle elsewhere, and another mother will look to you for sustenance and solace. You move now to the quarters of the wet nurses, worn wooden cradles lined up beneath narrow windows. Here, women who once birthed their own children now nurse infants claimed by hearths they did not build. You pause at the doorway, inhaling the scent of stale porridge and milk-sour tears. A gentle woman lifts her head from the cradle's edge, eyes ringed with midnight shadows. You feel the weight of her choice. For some, wet nursing brings needed coins to feed hungry siblings, yet it bears the bittersweet cost of a child's embrace given to another. You approach her side and offer a cup of warm broth laced with fennel and honey, its steam fogging the cool air. You rest a hand on her shoulder, feeling the tremor of her spine, and speak softly of courage and care. As she lifts the babe to her breast, You witness the blossom of relief in her eyes and the poignancy of milk flowing for a child not her own. You remember the first time you watched your grandmother nurse an orphaned nephew, her gaze steady with compassion. Now, you honor that same silent bravery in every woman who lets her body become a lifeline beyond her own blood. In these cramped chambers, stories weave among you like threads in a tapestry. Exchange hushed confidences. One nurse speaks of a landlord's daughter shunning her child. Another recalls the joyous reunion when her own babe, sent to kin for safekeeping, returned wrapped in finery she could scarcely afford. Each narrative carries power, proof of resilience, reminders of bonds both broken and reforged. And though superstition whispers that a nurse's milk might steal a mother's vitality or invite spirits to meddle in infant dreams, you hold fast to faith in women's strength and the quiet grace of shared sacrifice. As candle flames gutter low, you prepare to leave. You gather your herbs, mugwort for ease of stitches, dill to soothe colic, and fold your linens with care. You speak blessings over each cradle, bidding both mother and nurse find rest in the coming hours. Outside, the wind stirs dead leaves across the cobblestones, and you inhale the crisp night air, letting it clear the chamber's lingering scents. In the stillness before dawn, you reflect on the delicate balance you uphold. A keeper of life's threshold, a witness to joy and grief, entrusted with souls no church bell might summon. You think of the laws that bind you, the prayers that guide you, and the communal threads of trust you spin between birthing stool and cradle. In every heartbeat you soothe with an herb's warmth or a gentle word. You forge connection across the vast divides of rank and fear. Now, with lantern lowered and basket empty of all but blessings, you step into the darkened street, its stones cool beneath your sandals. You breathe deeply, tasting freedom laced with duty, and know that when the first light of morning gilds the rooftops, you will return, ready to cradle another life, to comfort another mother, to serve this fragile world with steady hands and a gentle heart. If you've learned something new about women's work, leave a heart below to let me know. May your dreams be as tender as a mother's embrace and your rest as deep as the peace you bring to each newborn soul. As flower dust settles in morning rays, ask yourself, what price are we willing to pay for daily bread? You step into the bakery just as dawn's first light creeps through narrow windows, carrying with it the yeasty warmth of steaming loaves baked through the night. The air inside is thick with heat and the sweet, sour tang of rising dough. You feel wood ash grit underfoot and the faint echo of your own breath as you near the cavernous stone oven, its arched mouth glowing with embers that hold yesterday's fire and today's promise. A baker, his apron streaked with flour and sweat, moves with practiced ease. Each motion honed by years of kneading and stoking, turning simple grain into sustenance for a growing town. Your fingers brush against a newly shaped belay, its surface taut and smooth. You lean close, inhaling the heady scent of fermented grains. The baker murmurs that the grain came this morning from a farmer's cart, ground by the miller's steady stones into coarse meal, then sifted and measured with care. You trace the circular iron brand on the loaf's crust, a symbol granted by the guild to ensure fair weight and purity. Guild regulations dictate that every baker must yield only bread of approved quality, for any loaf underweight or tainted by ash invites heavy fines or even the loss of one's license. Beyond the oven's heat, you see the communal hearth where villagers without private ovens bring their dough to bake. Each resident marks their bread with a unique stick-scarce emblem before placing it in the great oven, sharing its warmth and fuel. You imagine the conversations hushed around the hearth, news of a distant court, gossip of a traveling troubadour, concerns over the coming harvest. In this shared space, the division between peasant and journeyman softens, united by the simple need for sustenance. When the baker lifts the first batch of golden rounds from the oven, you feel a rush of warmth bloom in your chest. He sets them on a wooden plank and scores the crust to release steam. The loaves sing as steam hisses from each cut, and you line up to help portion them. 2 for the miller, 1 for the widow by the churchyard, 3 for the Lord steward. Each loaf carries weight beyond itself, weight of expectation, of survival, of community. But while bread binds neighbors in shared hunger, another early hour summons you to the butcher's yard, where torchlight flickers against slabs of frozen meat. You cross an open courtyard where sawdust lies thick beneath your boots, damp from night's frost. The butcher's apprentice stands vigilant beside a block of aged oak, a gleaming steel axe in hand. There is no warmth here but the glow of torches and the red sheen on rib bones exposed to night air. You approach the carcass of a deer felled at dawn, its flank stiff with cold. You grip the handle of a fleshing knife, its edge honed sharp enough to slice sinew from bone. Each cut requires focus and strength. A slip could dull the blade or nick a tendon, spoiling the meat or risking injury. The smell of iron and cold blood hangs heavy, and you taste the sharp tang at the back of your tongue. This work, essential as bread making, carries a fierce solitude. Few linger by the scalding vats where hides are cleansed of flesh before being sent to tanners who soften them into leather for shoes, belts, and saddles. Yet even this task demands careful precision to preserve each hide's strength and integrity. The butcher recites guidelines learned from the guild masters. Never mix pork with beef in the smokehouse, always salt hams in salt sourced from the coast, and inspect every joint for hidden rot. Guilds governed meat trade with strict codes, weights affixed by marked knives, fines levied for undercuts, licenses required to open shop. These rules protected consumers and upheld the butcher's standing, for the stench of spoilage could ruin both health and livelihood. At midday, you cross paths with both trades under the open arcades of the market square, baskets of bread balanced on one arm, wedges of cured meat in the other. You pause at a pillar to rest your load, trading a warm loaf for a slice of hearty sausage from a neighboring stall. You notice the baker's apprentice wiping sweat from his brow, and the butcher's apprentice rinsing bone chips from his knife. Their eyes meet briefly in silent camaraderie, a shared recognition of labor's cost. Baking and butchery demand endurance of body and spirit. Bakers knead dough until forearms burn, hauling sacks of grain heavier than they seem. They tend ovens through chilling nights, stoke fires at unholy hours, and heed guild fines that punish even slight mismeasurements. Butchers wrestle with carcasses bound by frost or stench, swing axes in pre-dawn hush, and carry social disdain for handling life's last sacrifice. Both crafts risk injury, infection, and censure for mistakes. As dusk approaches, you help pile remaining bread under a linen cloth to cool, and you scrub blood from the butcher's block, water turning pink before draining away. The baker closes the oven door, sealing residual heat for tomorrow's dawn, while the butcher hangs cured hams in the smokehouse, lantern light dancing among pale strips of meat. Both share a final nod, a gesture of respect born from exhausting days and essential toil. In the quiet that follows, you carry a small loaf home and unwrap it gently, the crust cracking under your fingers. You break off a piece, warm and fragrant, and taste its tender crumb. You recall every hand that shaped this simple food, from grain sown in distant fields to barn-hung meats cured by winter's breath. In that flavor, you recognize the hidden labor woven into the fabric of daily life. May every loaf taste of shared humanity. You stand before the massive stones, their surfaces etched by centuries of grinding as water from the river arches through sluices into the wooden wheel. Your palms press against the cool, damp millstone, feeling its tremor beneath your fingertips as it turns with measured inevitability. Each grain you pour into the hopper falls into darkness between stone and stone, crushed into flour that will feed dozens by week's end. The air here is thick with flour dust, drifting like pale mist in shafts of morning light, and you inhale its sweet, earthy scent, smelling both promise and toil. The miller's apron is heavy with powder, and you tug at its worn leather straps, feeling the tug of duty across your shoulders. You recall the first time you heard villagers whisper that the miller held the power of life and death in his hand. Too slow a turn of the wheel, too coarse the grind, and bread would crumble. Too fine, and it might spoil more quickly. In each grain's journey through stone, trust is forged. Yet suspicion simmers beneath the surface of every loaf. Did the miller charge extra for underweight grind? Did he skim the finest flour for private sale? You swallow these murmurs like dry crumbs, focusing instead on the rhythm of the wheel. Beyond these stones, you step onto the narrow wooden gallery that encircles the room. You brace against the timber railing and peer down at the river's churn, where currents pull beneath the wheel's paddles with ceaseless appetite. You feel the spray of droplets on your cheeks, cold and invigorating, and you remember that watermills are the lifeblood of many villages. In lands where windmills perch atop distant hills, sails catch the breeze to drive gears and millstones too, though those giants crystallize power behind closed doors, hidden from prying eyes. Here, The water's raw force is plain to see. A partnership between human ingenuity and nature's flow. As you scoop flour into wooden troughs, you pause to consider tolls and rights. The lord of the manor claims a share of grain for each sack processed, a portion he calls the mulcher. To dispute him is to risk both heavy fines and a snapped mule whip. You remember the flick of whipcord on the miller's back when he dared to question the steward's accounting. In hushed tones by the hearth, villagers debate whether a windmill, or an outlaw mill, might offer cheaper spice to their simmering pottage. Yet each rebel mill must outrun royal bailiffs as well as local fury. You step back to let another miller's hand guide the next sack, then wipe your brow, leaving a smear of white across clay-dusted skin. Beyond the mill's door, the morning sun warms your face, and you hear the clip-clop of hooves on cobblestones. A cart appears, its wooden wheels bowing under the weight of sacks slung across rough planks. You pause your work to watch the carter steer a pair of oxen, great beasts with backs bowed under panniers, down the narrow lane that links mill to town. Each wheel creaks with protest as it negotiates ruts carved by seasons of rain and frost. You join the carter by his cart and feel the jangle of iron harnesses as he loosens a strap to share a crust of bread. Its crumb, coarse and slightly bitter, tastes of barley and effort. He offers you a sip of watered ale from a curved wooden cup, the beverage thick with grains that settled in the barrel. As you drink, he nods toward the road ahead, a ribbon of churned earth stretching toward the distant market, lined with signposts demanding tolls for each passing axle. Bridges and ford crossings bear stone archways where keepers collect coins, each a reminder that movement of goods is never free. The carter's back aches from hours perched on that creaking cart, and you feel sympathy ripple through your own limbs. When loaded with sacks of flour, his wheels must climb steep banks toward castle gates, each step a labor of sweat and grain dust. A stumble on uneven ground could spill half the cargo into muddy ditches, losses that mean starvation in larders. You glance down at his boots, caked with mud and straw, and think of the leather tanner back in town who might forge new pairs, provided the carter can trade heifers or collect another toll-free pass. Together, you navigate a blind curve where the road narrows between hedgerows. The cart shudders as the near wheel slips into a hollow, and you brace yourself, heart pounding. The carter's voice is calm as he coaxes the oxen forward, urging them with soft whines. The heavy axle groans and then rights itself, carrying you both safely onto a stretch of sun-dappled path. In that moment, you sense the fragility beneath each journey. Grain grown in fields vulnerable to blight, flour milled by stones that crack without warning, carts traversing roads that can swallow wheels whole. Yet this fragile network sustains the pulse of village life. Returning to the mill after the carter departs, you resume feeding grain into the hopper, each handful a testament to human persistence. You recall how windmills crow over distant dunes, their sails wide like arms reaching for the future, while watermills stand humble by riverside, honored by local custom yet blamed whenever bread falls short. You reflect on the miller's paradox. Wealthier than many peasants, he yet stands scapegoat for every lean winter. The hush of the mill contrasts with the clamor of accusation, reminding you that power and vulnerability often occupy the same stones. As afternoon wanes, you shovel the last of the day's grain from the floor and brush flour from the work table. You run your hand through tangled hair streaked white with dust, then wipe off your sleeve and cradle a small cloth sack of fresh flour. The weight feels comforting in your palm, a silent promise of loaves yet to rise, of pottage yet to simmer. You follow the familiar path to the riverbank where the cart will return, lanterns strung between carts guiding travelers by night. You greet two carters paused to mend a wheel's splintered rim, offering strong hands and quiet counsel, and you trade news of upcoming rains that might swell the river's banks and slow the mills for days. When the light finally dips beyond the treetops, you extinguish the lanterns in the mill's rafters, leaving only the soft glow of dusk to pool on the stone floor. You feel the ache in your own back settle into a dull hum, a reminder of the shared burdens of millers and carters alike. You tuck away your tools, a wooden paddle, a cloth sack, a pair of leather gloves, and step into the cool evening air. The river, now calm and dark, murmurs past the mill wheel's silent spokes, as though offering thanks for another day's work. If you're traveling with us through medieval roads, please subscribe and leave your questions below. May your rest be as steady as the millstone's turn and as sure as the oxen's pace. Brace yourself for the hush that falls before justice, and the cost paid by those who carry the axe. You stand at the edge of a rough platform hewn from planks dark with age and blood. The air is still, heavy with the musk of damp wood and the sharp tang of iron. In your gloved hand, you cradle the coarse cloth hood that apprentices don to shield their faces from both the condemned and the world beyond. Its weight is a reminder. You are both sentinel and instrument of the law, bound to service by oath and necessity. Around you, torchlight flickers against stone walls, sending shadows dancing like restless spirits across the heads of gathered townsfolk. Below the gallows, a crowd presses forward, breath held in collective anticipation. You taste metallic fear on your tongue, as bitter as the stale ale drained from nervous throats. Children clutch parents' skirts. Merchants still in their stalls hold coins too tightly, as if a slip might summon fate's darker hand. You draw a slow breath, feeling the rough fibers of your hood whisper against your cheek, and you recall the first time you watched a man's head fall under a sword's edge. The rasp as steel met wood, the dull thud as blade severed spine, etched forever across your mind like runes of warning. From your vantage, you observe the executioner, cloaked in black, his broad shoulders a fortress between justice and mercy. His gauntleted fingers rest on the pommel of the heavy sword, its steel glinting in torchlight. You remember when you first served under him, a trembling boy eager to learn the weight of life and death, only to discover that each lesson demanded both cruelty and compassion. Apprenticeship is a paradox. You must train to inflict pain with precise efficiency, yet steel yourself against pity if you hope to survive the toll on your own heart. The condemned is brought forth, ankles bound with coarse rope that bites into swollen skin. A hush falls deeper still as he staggers to the block. His face is pale, eyes wide with sorrow or defiance, perhaps both. You feel the hush as a physical thing, pressing into your chest like a weight you cannot lift. You recall the families of executioners, living on society's margins, essential instruments of order, yet shunned when day turns to night. Their children bore the stigma of their father's trade, barred from neighbors' doors and denied simple courtesies. You learned early to mask both your face and your family lineage with anonymity's cloak. Feet planted on the platform, you hear the hinges of the oak block creak as the executioner readies his tools. The sword rests in its leather sheath, a knightly blade repurposed for this grim ritual. You know how it gleams, cold and silent, before the ritual. A promise of swift finality or trembling agony, depending on blade's sharpness and executioner's skill. The crowd leans forward, eager for both spectacle and closure, to witness the payment exacted for crimes both grave and petty. Theft of grain, blasphemy whispered in church aisles, words spoken against the Lord Steward. Your mind flickers to superstition that swirls around the gallows. Some say that executioners' hoods are enchanted to bind malevolent spirits released at death. Others whisper that the blood spilled here nourishes the gallows wood, granting it dark power to ward off ghosts. You find comfort in neither legend nor formal prayer, only in the precision of your duties. To steady the condemned's shoulders, to hold the block steady if the wood quivers, to catch the head should it roll. Each task guards the dignity of the fallen soul, however stripped of rights it may be. In the final moment, the executioner raises his sword, muscles coiled like springs. The crowd inhales as one, torches gutter as if in funeral dirge. You feel a tremor beneath your boots, the platform alive with collective breath. Then the blade arcs downward, whispering through air, and you close your eyes against the flash of steel. A soft thud, a gasp from the onlookers, and you step forward to perform your office, lifting the body by its shoulders, cradling it as solemnly as a cradle-bound child, and placing it into waiting linen. Silence follows, deeper than before. You fold the condemned's hood around the body's head, tucking it like a shroud, and guide the procession away from the gallows. The crowd parts in reverent gloom, torches bobbing like fireflies reluctant to let go of the light. You feel their gaze, heavy with relief and grim fascination, and you know that tomorrow their tongues will wag with every grisly detail. Yet tonight, they bear witness to the executioner's art, the slow, exacting machinery of state-sanctioned violence. Back in the executioner's yard, you lay the blade across a stone trough and study its edge. blood clings in thin rivulets to the polished steel, glinting like dark jewels. You wet cloth in cold water and begin to clean, each stroke careful to preserve the blade's immaculate razor edge. As you work, you remember your father's voice, a dull blade dishonest both judge and condemned. You scrub until the last trace of gore is gone, a ritual as sacred as any prayer, whispering thanks to the careful steel. Through whispered conversation, you learn of the next day's work. A public branding for vagrants, a drowning for accused witches, a tarring and feathering for debtors unpayable. Each sentence demands apprenticeship's hard lessons: how to bind a wrist without cutting veins, how to steer a feathered victim through town without maiming the flesh beyond recognition. You steel yourself for these tasks, knowing each will bruise your conscience in different ways. Yet you also know that society demands both spectacle and order, that fear's finger guides prosperity's hand, and that your craft underpins the fragile balance between chaos and control. Before dawn, you slip away to the modest quarters reserved for you and fellow apprentices. There, the stench of sweat and blood is buried beneath straw pallets and slow-simmering broth scented with nettle and onion. You strip off the hood, revealing skin tightened by stress, and run a hand through hair dusted with sawdust from the gallows. You share a bowl of soup in silence, each apprentice lost in thought, some haunted by the condemned's final plea, others numb to the weight of their duties. Outside, the church bell tolls the hour, its peal carrying across darkened rooftops. You pause in your bowl, spoon hovering, and you wonder, does each ring toll for the souls you have unmade, or for your own quiet undoing? You swallow, taste the bitter broth, and remind yourself that necessity binds you here. Without your skill, justice would falter. Without your precision, punishment would descend into chaos. You are the hidden pivot on which mercy and vengeance both turn. At last, you rise and don your apprentice's hood anew. You gather the sword, the block, the ropes, and your own steely resolve. Each piece of equipment fits like a familiar friend, worn and trusted in its place. You step into the faint pre-dawn light, shoulders squared against the coming day. You know that in this world, some souls must bear the weight of death so that others may sleep safe in their beds. You carry that burden with solemn pride, knowing it binds you to both the darkest depths of human cruelty and the narrow path of duty's necessity. If this chapter intrigues yet unsettles you, comment with your thoughts on the burdens of sanctioned violence. May your dreams be gentle, and may you never feel the weight of an executioner's hood upon your brow. As twilight deepens, you settle beside the dying embers of yesterday's fire. The air around you grows cool, carrying the faint scent of cedar smoke and dew-laden grass. You close your eyes and draw in a slow, measured breath, feeling the tension of many lifetimes lift from your shoulders. In the hush of this evening hour, you reflect on the journeys we've shared over the flickering glow, from ragpickers scavenging life scraps to laundresses kneading stubborn mud into suds, from midwives cradling fragile new breaths to bakers coaxing loaves from glowing ovens, millers harnessing water's force, and even executioners' apprentices bearing the weight of sanctioned suffering. Each thread in this tapestry has shown us courage, hardship, and quiet dignity woven through perilous days. Imagine those ragpickers once more, bending in damp lanes at first light, gathering tattered cloth and bone with cautious determination. You sense their measured pride as they traded scraps for coin and bread, sustaining families through frost and famine alike. Recall the laundresses standing ankle-deep in rushing streams, arms burning from caustic lye, feet dancing across slick stones as they scrubbed both fabric and livelihood into renewed purpose. These women endured burns and cracked nails so others might wear clean garments. Think of the laundry's distant echo each time you don fresh linen today. Turn your thoughts to the miller's stones, each revolution singing of survival and suspicion entwined. Picture water sluicing beneath wooden paddles, turning massive stones that ground wheat into flour destined to feed generations. Reflect on the carter whose creaking cart wheels bore not only sacks of grain but the hopes of harvest fairs, toll coins gleaming coldly in each hand. Feel the jangle of iron harnesses and the ache of animal flanks as oxen toiled along rutted roads, forging links in a chain of provision that stretched from field to table. In candlelit chambers, midwives moved with patient grace, herbs and prayers gifting comfort amid pain. You imagine the hush broken by one newborn's cry, a sound both triumphant and terrifying. You recall the gentlest press of violet-soaked cloth beneath a mother's chin, the tremor in each whispered reassurance. Nearby, wet nurses offered their milk as solace for infants not their own, forging bonds born of necessity and compassion, even as fearful whispers warned that milk could steal a mother's spirit. These women embraced both loss and replenishment in equal measure. And then there were those who walked a darker path, executioners' apprentices with hoods pulled low. You taste metallic fear on your tongue as you remember the rasp of the sword's edge and the hush of crowds awaiting final justice. You feel the paradox of families ostracized yet indispensable, how a single swing of steel could terrify and reassure a frightened populace alike. In their grim craft, you glimpse moral ambiguity entwined with societal necessity, a duality that still shadows our modern undercurrents of law and order. In these reflections, you see a tapestry woven from courage and hardship, stain and strength, where every thread tells of dignity found in labors unseen. These worst jobs revealed virtues that prospered despite scorn and risk, ingenuity in turning waste into warmth, solidarity born in communal ovens, and sanctity found at birth's threshold. In our own modern age, hidden toils persist. The overnight cleaners who scrub empty halls under fluorescent hum, postal carriers sorting dawn's letters by lamplight, refuse collectors hauling burdens we scarcely acknowledge. Each of these tasks, unseen yet indispensable, echoes the medieval crafts we've traversed. Pause for a moment to honor these present-day pilgrims of labor, their quiet dedication a living testament to shared humanity. Now imagine standing in a rolling field under a vaulted twilight sky. The grass ripples like muted applause, and the distant tree line hums with the whisper of evening winds. You breathe deeply, tasting the sweet tang of lavender and earth, and exhale slowly, releasing echoes of toil. The lies burn, the millstones grit, the blood and bone left behind at gallows. With each exhale, burdens soften, carried away on currents of growing calm. As you rest here, whisper a silent thanks to those unnamed souls who fed, clothed, tended, and carried away lives in humble service. Let their sacrifices root you in the present, reminding you that compassion and labor remain inseparable threads of our shared humanity. Feel a gentle warmth bloom within your chest, extending outward until it fills horizon and heart alike, connecting past to present. Guided by memories of woven lives, close your eyes once more. Picture golden fields swaying beneath star-stitched sky, each stalk nurtured by unseen hands. Notice the subtle chorus of nocturnal life, crickets chirping, owls calling, blending with your own steady heartbeat. With each breath, drift deeper into restful stillness, cradled in the kinship of centuries and modern echoes alike. Feel the ground beneath you solid and supportive, as though each ancient footstep rests beneath your soles, anchoring you in this moment. Allow the quiet dignity of these stories to become your lullaby. As ember glow fades to charcoal gray, trust that every end holds promise of renewal, each dusk the prelude to dawn. Embrace the hush with gentle curiosity. What echoes will your own hands leave upon the tapestry of time? When sleep's soft current draws you under, carry with you the lessons of empathy and endurance. Remember that wherever hardship resides, compassion endures and threads hearts across centuries. Let these echoes through time rock you gently into dreams.